Emily Carter had always believed she was good at planning her trips. As a wildlife photographer, she had crossed deserts, climbed hills, and lived in tiny cabins for weeks just to capture rare moments in nature. She always prepared ahead of time, carried extra food, packed warm clothes, and kept her Jeep in good shape. But on this quiet autumn evening in Wyoming, she discovered that even the most careful people could still face the unexpected. The sun was slowly sinking behind the wide, open fields, painting the sky with orange and gold. Emily drove along a narrow dirt road, surrounded by tall grass that swayed gently whenever the wind passed through. She had seen a herd of wild horses earlier that day, and she was returning to town with a camera full of beautiful photos. She felt satisfied, comfortable, and ready for a warm dinner. But then her Jeep made a strange sound. A soft clicking at first, then a long, heavy groan, and before she could react, the engine went completely silent. The Jeep slowed down until it stopped in the middle of the empty road. Emily blinked in confusion. She tried turning the key again, but the engine didn't respond. Not even a small sound of hope. She tried again and again, each time with a little more worry in her chest. The sky was getting darker. The air was getting colder. And there was not a single sign of another person for miles. Emily stepped out of the Jeep and rubbed her hands together to stay warm. The nearest town was at least an hour away, and she knew walking alone in the dark could be risky. She picked up her phone to call for help, but the screen showed no signal at all. The tall hills nearby blocked any chance of connecting. For the first time that day, Emily felt truly nervous. She hugged her jacket tightly around her and looked around, hoping for a miracle. That was when she heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound, hooves touching the ground. Emily turned sharply. In the distance, a figure on horseback slowly approached. At first, the fading light made it hard to see him clearly. All she saw was a tall man wearing a hat and a long coat, riding a strong brown horse. He moved calmly, as if he had all the time in the world. Emily's heart raced. She remembered the conversation she'd overheard earlier that morning at a small gas station. Two locals had been talking about a rancher in the area, someone who rarely came to town and preferred to keep his distance. They hadn't said he was dangerous, but the way they described him, quiet, intense, and always alone, made him sound mysterious. And people often feared what they did not understand. Now Emily wondered if this was the same man. The same cowboy who hardly spoke to anyone. The same person who seemed to carry heavy stories that no one dared to ask about as he came closer. She noticed how large the horse was, and how the man sat with a steady, confident posture. His coat moved slightly with the wind, and his hat covered most of his face. Emily felt a cold flutter in her stomach. She didn't know if he was friendly, or if approaching him was a mistake. But she also didn't have another choice. When the man reached her, he gently pulled the horse to a stop. For a moment, he simply studied the situation, her Jeep, her expression, the quiet road behind her. Then he lifted his head. His eyes were calm, steady, and surprisingly gentle. "You stuck?" he asked, his voice low but not unkind. Emily nodded slowly. "My Jeep just died. I can't get it to start." He glanced at the Jeep again. "No signal around here. You won't be able to call a mechanic." She already knew that, but hearing him say it made reality feel heavier. The man dismounted from his horse, landing softly on the ground. He walked toward the Jeep with slow, thoughtful steps. Emily felt her breath catch, not because he looked threatening, but because she had no idea who he was. She tried to appear calm, even though her mind kept repeating what she'd overheard earlier. The rumors, the assumptions, the uncertainty. He opened the Jeep's hood and leaned forward to check the engine. Emily watched carefully, ready to step back if she felt uncomfortable. But his movements were gentle, patient, almost careful, as if he didn't want to startle her. After a moment, he stepped back and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Your battery's dead," he said. "I don't have tools with me to fix it here. Closest place you can get help is in town, and it's too far to walk in this cold." Emily swallowed. The sky was almost completely dark now, and she could feel the temperature dropping fast. He looked at her again. "My ranch is nearby. I can take you there. You can stay the night and call someone in the morning when there's better light." Emily hesitated. She didn't want to follow a stranger, especially not one with a quiet presence that made her feel both curious and unsure. But the cold breeze reminded her she didn't have many choices. If she stayed in the Jeep, she would spend the night freezing. If she walked, she might get lost in the dark. And despite her fear, something about the cowboy's expression made her pause. There was no pushiness, no impatience. He waited for her answer without rushing her. "What's your name?" she asked softly, needing reassurance. "Caleb," he replied. "Caleb Ward." Emily repeated it in her mind. The name felt familiar. Maybe it was the same man the locals were talking about. But his voice didn't match the frightening image she'd imagined earlier. It was calm, steady, and strangely comforting. After a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay, thank you." Caleb guided his horse closer and helped her climb onto it. Emily wasn't used to riding a horse, so she held the saddle tightly. Caleb mounted behind her, leaving enough space so she didn't feel uncomfortable. He held the reins with experienced hands and gently guided the horse forward. The ride through the quiet evening was unlike anything Emily had ever experienced. The world around them was peaceful, no cars, no buildings, just the sound of the horse moving and the soft rustling of grass. The sky above them turned a deep blue sprinkled with stars. Emily still felt nervous, but the fear slowly mixed with a strange sense of safety. Caleb didn't talk much, but sometimes silence spoke louder than words. His calm presence eased her heart a little. After a long, slow ride, warm lights appeared in the distance. A small ranch house stood near a barn in a fenced field. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, hinting at warmth inside. Emily felt relief wash over her. Caleb helped her down carefully. "You're safe here," he said quietly. Emily glanced around. The place looked peaceful, clean, welcoming in a quiet, simple way. She hadn't expected that. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood and warm supper. A soft lamp glowed in the living room. Caleb handed her a blanket. "You must be cold. Sit by the fire. I'll make some tea." Emily sat carefully on the couch and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. Her fingers slowly warmed, and she let her eyes wander around the room. There were pictures of horses, old paintings of fields, and shelves filled with books about ranching and nature. Nothing about this place felt frightening. When Caleb returned with a warm cup of tea, he placed it gently in front of her. Emily held it with both hands, feeling the heat travel up her arms. "You can stay until morning," he said. "You'll be okay here." Emily looked at him, surprised by how kind his voice sounded. "Thank you," she whispered. "I wasn't sure what to expect when you rode up earlier." He nodded knowingly. "Most people aren't. I keep to myself. Makes folks imagine things sometimes." Emily felt a hint of embarrassment for believing the rumors, even for a moment. Now that she was sitting in his warm, safe home, his kindness was clear enough to see. Outside, the wind grew louder, but inside, Emily finally felt calm. She had feared the worst when she first saw the cowboy approaching her on the road. But instead of harm, she had found safety, warmth, and unexpected compassion, and she didn't yet know it. But this night was only the beginning of a story she would remember for the rest of her life. Emily woke up the next morning to the soft sound of birds singing outside the window. For a moment, she wasn't sure where she was. The room she slept in was warm, quiet, and filled with soft morning light. It took her a second to remember the night before the Jeep breaking down, the long ride on horseback, and the quiet cowboy who had helped her without asking for anything in return. She sat up slowly and stretched. The guest room was simple but clean, with wooden walls and a small bedside table holding a glass of water. A folded quilt lay at the end of the bed, and the window looked out over a field covered in golden morning sunlight. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had been scared the night before, but now she felt safe, warm, grateful. When she walked into the living room, she found Caleb already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. He looked up as she entered, and although his expression was still serious, there was a quiet gentleness in his eyes. "Good morning," he said in a calm tone. "Good morning," Emily replied, feeling a little shy. "Thank you again for letting me stay." "You're welcome," he said simply. "I made breakfast. You should eat before we try to call someone for your Jeep." Emily noticed a plate on the table with scrambled eggs, toast, and sliced fruit. It wasn't fancy, but it smelled wonderful. She sat down, and Caleb poured her a cup of warm tea. He didn't hover or speak too much. He just moved around the kitchen in a calm, steady rhythm. As she ate, she found herself studying him quietly in the warm morning light. His hat was off now, revealing gently messy hair. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, showing strong, hard-working hands. He looked like someone who spent most of his days outdoors. There was a quiet strength about him, but also a tender patience that she hadn't expected when she first saw him on the road. "You live here alone?" Emily asked softly, hoping not to pry. Caleb nodded. "It's just me and the animals." "It's peaceful," she said honestly. Caleb looked out the window as if he agreed but didn't want to say it out loud. He didn't seem like a man who shared many words. Emily understood that silence wasn't a sign of coldness with him, it was simply his nature. After breakfast, they went outside to the porch. The morning air was crisp and clean, and the ranch looked even more beautiful in daylight. Wooden fences stretched across rolling hills, and horses grazed quietly in the distance. Emily felt a sense of calm settle over her. "Let me see if I can reach someone," Caleb said, pulling out his phone. "There's a spot near the barn where the signal works." He walked a few steps away and made a call. Emily listened as he calmly explained the situation to a local mechanic. He didn't complain, didn't make it sound like an inconvenience. He spoke in that same gentle, low tone that made everything sound steady. When he came back, he said the mechanic will go to your Jeep in about an hour. He'll bring new cables and check everything. You should be able to leave by noon. Emily smiled with relief. "Thank you, really." Caleb nodded, as if he wasn't sure how to respond to gratitude. He simply said, "While we wait, I can show you around if you want." "I'd like that," Emily said, her curiosity growing. Caleb led her toward the barn, walking slowly so she could enjoy the scenery. The fields were wide and golden, like a picture she would love to capture with her camera. The sky was bright blue, and the gentle breeze made the grass dance softly. Inside the barn, the horses lifted their heads when they saw them coming. Caleb moved toward them with a calm confidence that showed he knew exactly how to communicate with animals. Emily watched as he petted a brown horse lovingly, smiling in a quiet, almost hidden way. "This is Maple," he said. "She's gentle." Emily reached out to pet the horse's head. Maple didn't shy away. Instead, she nuzzled Emily's hand as if she had known her for years. "She likes you," Caleb said with a small smile. Emily felt warmth spread through her chest. There was something peaceful about being here, something she hadn't expected to find when she first got stranded on the road. As they walked around the ranch, Emily asked, "Do you always stay out here by yourself?" Caleb hesitated before answering. "Most of the time. Do you like it?" she asked gently. He took a deep breath. "I do. But it wasn't always planned." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My brother and I grew up here. We used to run this place together." Emily listened quietly. She didn't rush him. She didn't interrupt. She sensed that these were not stories he shared with just anyone. "He was younger than me," Caleb continued. "Always full of ideas, always excited about something. We did everything together. He loved the horses, the land, the freedom." His eyes softened when he spoke about him, but she could also sense a quiet sadness beneath the surface. "He wanted to make the ranch bigger, better. I wanted that too." Emily walked beside him without speaking. She felt that giving him space to talk was the best kindness she could offer. Then one day Caleb said he got hurt. Not in a big way. Just a small accident while working with the animals. But it scared him. Scared both of us. We were young then, and I kept thinking I should have been more careful. He shook his head softly. He recovered, but I think the fear stayed with him. And after that, he left. Said he needed a different life. Emily felt her heart ache gently. "Did you stay here alone after that?" Caleb nodded. "The ranch needed someone, and I figured if he ever wanted to come back, he'd know where to find me." "Do you still talk to him?" Emily asked softly. Caleb looked out at the wide fields. Not much. But I hope he's happy. Emily admired his honesty. His voice held no bitterness, only quiet acceptance. She realized that the lonely, mysterious cowboy people talked about in town wasn't unfriendly or dangerous. It was simply someone who carried memories close to his heart. Someone who had chosen peace and quiet when life became heavy. As they continued walking, Emily felt comfortable beside him, even in silence. She could see that his quiet nature wasn't emptiness. It was depth. He felt things strongly. He just didn't express them loudly. "I'm sorry people misunderstand you," she said gently. He gave her a curious look. "What makes you say that?" Emily hesitated. "Yesterday, at the gas station, I overheard some people talking. They made you sound distant, unpredictable." Caleb nodded slowly, as if he'd heard it all before. "People say what they want. I don't mind. I keep to myself. That's enough reason for them to wonder." Emily realized he had lived with rumors for years and simply learned to live above them. It made her respect him even more. When they returned to the porch, Caleb offered her a seat on the old wooden swing. He pushed it gently so it rocked back and forth in a slow, calming motion. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, enjoying the warmth of the sun on her face. "You're comfortable here?" Caleb said quietly, almost surprised. "I am," she replied. "More than I expected." He nodded, but she saw a small smile tug at the corner of his mouth. It was the kind of smile that appeared rarely like a secret gift. They spent the next hour talking about photography, animals, and the beauty of the land around them. Caleb listened closely whenever she spoke, and Emily found herself sharing stories she usually kept to herself. She didn't know why, but something about his presence made honesty easy. At one point, Caleb said, "You see the world with detail. Most people rush too much to notice." Emily felt touched by the comment. "And you see things calmly? Most people react too quickly." Caleb tilted his head thoughtfully. "Maybe that's why we understand each other." The moment felt warm, simple, and unexpectedly meaningful. Soon after, the mechanic called to say he had reached the Jeep. Caleb saddled his horse, and together they rode out to the road. The mechanic greeted them kindly, and within half an hour, the Jeep's battery was fixed. Emily watched as Caleb talked to the mechanic in his calm, respectful way. It made her realize that the world had judged him too quickly. Before she left, Emily looked at him and felt a gentle tug in her heart. "Thank you for everything," she said. "You didn't have to help me so much." Caleb looked at her with steady eyes. "I'm glad you were safe. That's what matters." Emily smiled. "It mattered to me, too." When she drove away, she kept glancing at the mirror, watching the quiet cowboy standing beside his horse. She knew this wasn't the end of their story. Something about the ranch, the peaceful silence, and Caleb's gentle strength stayed with her like a warm memory she didn't want to let go. The storm lasted through the night, and by morning, the world outside looked fresh and peaceful, as if the land had been washed clean. The sky was bright again, painted with gentle shades of blue and soft clouds drifting slowly across. Birds chirped from the trees. Sunlight sparkled on the wet grass like tiny diamonds. Emily stood by the window of the guest room, watching drops of water slide down the glass. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling a mix of sadness and calmness in her heart. She had known from the moment she woke up that today she would have to leave. The roads would be safe again, her Jeep was repaired, and her work called her back to the world beyond the ranch. But leaving felt strange, almost painful, not because she feared anything outside, but because she had found something unexpectedly comforting inside this quiet home. For 2 days, she had lived in a world that felt steady, gentle, and peaceful. A world she didn't want to lose. She took a slow breath and stepped out into the hallway. Caleb was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of warm coffee. He looked up when he heard her soft footsteps. His expression was calm as always, but there was something thoughtful in his eyes, something she had begun to understand. "Morning," he said in his quiet voice. "Morning," she replied. Feeling her heart tighten just a little, "I made tea for you," he added, pointing to a cup on the counter. And there's breakfast if you want some. Emily smiled gently and took the cup. The warm tea felt soothing between her hands. She sat across from him, noticing the peaceful silence between them. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't empty. It felt like a soft understanding, as if they had learned more about each other in 2 days than most people learned in weeks. "Did you sleep well?" Caleb asked. "Yes," Emily said. "Thank you for everything, really." Caleb nodded lightly, but the way his fingers wrapped around his mug showed that her words meant something to him. "You're welcome." They ate breakfast together quietly. Emily studied the simple beauty of the kitchen, the wooden shelves, the soft light coming through the window, the quiet hum of life inside the house. A part of her wished she could pause time just for a moment and hold on to the warmth she felt here. After they finished eating, Emily stood by the door and looked out at the bright morning. Her Jeep sat near the barn, ready to take her away from this peaceful place. "I guess I should head out soon," she said softly. Caleb looked at her for a moment, then stood up slowly. "I'll ride with you to the road, just to make sure everything is all right." They walked outside together. The ground was still damp from the storm, and the air smelled fresh and clean. The horses grazed peacefully in the field, their coats glistening in the sunlight. Emily felt her heart tug as she watched Maple lift her head and nicker softly, as if saying goodbye. Caleb saddled his horse and guided it beside Emily's Jeep. When she opened the door to climb in, she paused and looked at him. "Thank you," she said again, but this time her voice was softer, heavier with emotion. "You helped me more than you know," Caleb nodded. "I'm glad you were safe here." Emily wanted to say Morshe wanted to tell him how peaceful she had felt around him, how his quiet kindness had comforted her in ways she didn't expect, but the words felt delicate, like they needed the right moment to be spoken. She started the Jeep, and Caleb rode slowly beside her as they made their way down the long dirt path toward the main road. Neither of them spoke much, but the silence felt meaningful, like both of them were trying to hold on to the last pieces of this unexpected connection. When they reached the road, Caleb pulled his horse to a stop. Emily stopped the Jeep too. The wind brushed softly through the grass, and for a moment, everything felt still. "This is as far as I go," Caleb said gently. Emily looked at him, her heart full of unspoken feelings. "Thank you for helping me, for giving me a place to stay, for everything." Caleb took a slow breath. "It was good having you here." The ranch felt different with someone around. Emily smiled softly. "Different in a good way, I hope." Caleb's lips curved into a small, shy smile, the kind that was rare but meaningful. In a good way. Emily could feel her heart warming and aching at the same time. She didn't want this moment to end, but she knew it had to. "I'll be back," Emily said before she even realized she was speaking. Caleb looked slightly surprised, but his eyes softened. "You're welcome anytime." Emily nodded, feeling her throat tighten with emotion. She wanted to stay. She wanted to spend more time with him, learn more about him, and feel this gentle peace again. But she also knew life wasn't always simple. She placed her hand on the window frame, as if trying to hold on to this moment. "Take care." "Caleb, you too, Emily." She drove away slowly, watching him in the rearview mirror until he became a small figure against the endless fields. Even when he disappeared from sight, she could still feel his presence, his kindness, his calmness, his quiet strength. The road stretched out in front of her, leading her back to her work, her travels, in the busy world she came from. But something inside her had changed. She felt lighter, steadier, like she had rediscovered a part of herself she didn't even know she had lost, as miles passed under her wheels. Her thoughts drifted back to the ranch. The warm firelight, the sound of horses, the peaceful silence. The way Caleb listened to her with full attention. The way he taught her to ride with gentle patience. The way he made her feel safe in a place she had never seen before. She realized she had not just met a helpful stranger. She had met someone who touched her life in a quiet but powerful way. Days passed, but the memory of the ranch stayed with her. When she looked through her camera photos, instead of seeing only landscapes and wildlife, She saw the ranch behind them, the warm light, the calm fields, and the gentle cowboy who had quietly opened his world to her. She found herself thinking of returning not for work this time, but because she wanted to, because she missed the peace of the ranch, because she missed the quiet understanding in Caleb's eyes, because something inside her felt connected to him in a way that felt natural, soft, and real. Caleb, too, returned to his quiet routines, but something felt different. The house seemed a little emptier. The mornings felt slightly quieter. He found himself glancing at the porch swing, remembering her laughter carried by the warm breeze, remembering the gentle way she spoke, remembering how she listened to him with understanding, remembering the soft glow she brought into the ranch. She had been like sunlight breaking through a long stretch of cloudy days. He didn't expect her to return soon, but he hoped she would, and that hope stayed with him, gentle and steady. Like the slow rhythm of his horse's steps or the peaceful wind flowing across the fields, he didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if their paths would cross again soon. But he knew that Emily had touched his life in a quiet, sincere way. She had seen him, not the rumors, not the silence, but the real person behind it all, and that meant more to him than he could ever express in words. Emily, driving through the open highway, whispered to herself, "I'll go back. I want to go back." She knew she would, because the cowboy she once feared had not only kept her safe, he had changed something inside her. He had shown her a kind of peace she didn't know she needed, and in return, she had awakened a soft hope in him, the kind that made life feel warm again. Their story didn't end on that road. It was only the beginning of something gentle, unexpected, and beautifully real. Emily returned to the ranch the next afternoon, though she told herself she was only passing through the area for more photography. But deep down, she knew that wasn't the full truth. Something about the quiet ranch, the wide-open fields, and especially Caleb's calm presence had stayed with her after she left. It felt like a place her heart wanted to see again. When she pulled up to the ranch gate, she felt a flutter in her stomach. She wasn't sure how Caleb would react. Would he be surprised? Happy? Would he simply be calm and unreadable? Like the day before, she drove slowly along the dirt path until the ranch house came into view. Caleb was outside repairing a fence near the barn. His hat shaded his face, and he worked with a steady focus, gently lifting wooden boards and hammering them in place. He looked peaceful, as if he belonged to the land around him. Emily parked her Jeep and stepped out. Caleb looked up when he heard the engine stop. For a moment, he just watched her, his expression unreadable. Then a small, warm smile appeared. Small but enough to make Emily's heart feel lighter. "You came back," he said in his usual calm voice. Emily returned a gentle smile. "I did. I wanted to take a few more pictures of the fields. And I wanted to thank you again." "Properly. You already thanked me," he said, though his voice carried a soft warmth that showed he didn't mind her returning. "I know," she said, "but I still wanted to come." Caleb nodded and placed the hammer aside. "You're welcome here any time." The simple words made Emily's chest feel full. She walked closer, watching as he wiped his hands on a cloth. "Can I help with anything?" she asked. Caleb raised an eyebrow, a tiny hint of amusement in his eyes. "You want to help fix fences?" Emily laughed lightly. "Maybe not the fence, but something else." He thought for a moment. "You could help me with the horses. They like new company." It felt perfect. They walked toward the barn together. Inside, the soft smell of hay and warm animals filled the air. Maple, the gentle brown horse Emily had met yesterday, lifted her head and walked toward the gate the moment she saw them. "She remembers you," Caleb said. Emily reached out, running her fingers along Maple's soft forehead. "She's beautiful." Caleb nodded with quiet pride. "She's special. She's the calmest one we have." Emily could feel that calmness as she brushed Maple's coat. The horse leaned into her touch, the same way a friendly dog would. "Ah!" And Emily laughed softly. "You're good with her," Caleb said. "Most horses take time to trust someone." Emily felt a warm glow in her chest. "I think she's the one being good with me." Caleb handed her a grooming brush. "Here, brush her like this." He stood behind her and demonstrated with slow, gentle movements. Emily copied his motion, and Maple closed her eyes in contentment. As they groomed the horses together, quiet between them felt comforting rather than awkward. The barn was peaceful, filled only with soft sounds, the brushing, the horses breathing. The distant wind outside, Emily finally asked, "Do you ride every day?" "Mostly," Caleb replied. "It keeps me calm, helps me think. Can you teach me?" she asked, surprising even herself with the question. Caleb paused, looking at her with careful eyes. "If you're sure horses can sense fear, I'm not afraid," Emily said gently. "Not with you here." Something softened in his eyes at those words. He nodded. He saddled Maple and led her outside. Emily watched as the horse stood patiently, waiting. Caleb helped her climb onto the saddle, his hands steady and reassuring. Emily felt nervous at first. She didn't want to fall or look foolish, but Caleb's presence beside her brought a sense of reassurance. "Hold the reins lightly," he instructed. "Don't pull unless you want her to slow down." Emily nodded, gripping them exactly as he showed her. Caleb walked beside Maple, guiding her gently. As the horse moved forward, Emily felt a rush of excitement. The world around her seemed taller, wider, more beautiful from up on the saddle. "This is amazing," she said, smiling. "You're doing well," Caleb replied. After a few minutes, he stepped back and let Maple walk on her own while he walked nearby. Emily felt a mixture of freedom and trust. The morning sun was warm, the breeze gentle, and the sky clear. She felt alive in a way she hadn't felt for a long time. When the ride ended, she was laughing softly, her cheeks flushed with joy. Caleb watched her with a soft, warm look. "You're a natural." "Thank you," she said, catching her breath. "I've never done anything like this before. You did better than most beginners." Emily could feel her heart beat quicken, not from the ride, but from the quiet pride in his voice. She didn't know why Caleb's approval mattered so much, but it did. Later, they sat on the porch with cold lemonade Caleb had prepared. The porch swing rocked gently as they talked. Emily told him stories about her travels, the animals she'd photographed, and the people she met along the way. Caleb listened with full attention, nodding occasionally, asking questions that showed he truly cared about her words. Emily found herself sharing more than she planned, how she often felt lonely traveling from place to place, how she sometimes wished for a place that felt like home, even for a moment. Caleb looked out at the fields and said, "Everyone needs a place where they feel steady." His words were simple, but something in his tone made them feel meaningful. "What about you?" Emily asked. "Does this ranch make you feel steady?" Caleb took a slow breath. "It does, but it also holds memories. Some days those memories feel heavy." He glanced at her, then looked down at his hands. "It helps to share the space with someone once in a while." Emily's heart softened. She realized he had been alone for far too long. "I'm glad I came back," she said softly. He looked at her with warm, thoughtful eyes. "Me too." A soft cloud of silence settled between them. But it wasn't empty, it was full of unspoken understanding. That afternoon, clouds began to gather in the sky. The air grew colder, and the wind brushed stronger against the grass. Caleb looked up at the sky. "There's a storm coming," he said. "It might be a strong one." Emily felt a small shiver. "Should I try to get back to town before it hits?" "You won't make it in time," Caleb said gently but firmly. "It'll start soon. You should stay here again." Emily didn't mind the idea. In fact, part of her felt relieved. The ranch felt safe, warm, comforting in a way she couldn't fully explain. Caleb helped her bring her camera equipment inside before the rain started. Soon enough, the storm arrived, soft at first, then growing heavier. The wind moaned outside, and thunder rolled gently across the sky. But inside the ranch house, everything felt peaceful. Caleb lit a small lamp and made warm soup. They ate together at the wooden kitchen table while the storm whispered against the windows. It felt like the house was its own little world, untouched by the loud winds outside. After dinner, they sat near the fireplace. Emily wrapped herself in a blanket Caleb offered, and warmth slowly filled the room. "Does it storm like this often?" "Sometimes," Caleb replied. "It's normal around here. But it's always better not to be out in it." Emily nodded. I'm glad I'm here then. He gave her a soft look, one that made Emily feel as though she had known him far longer than a single day. The storm continued, but neither of them felt uneasy. They talked quietly about dreams, fears, and the little things that shaped their lives. Emily found herself opening up again, more deeply this time. She told him she often felt unsure about where she belonged because her job kept her moving constantly. Caleb listened, and then he said, maybe belonging isn't a place. Maybe it's a feeling. Emily looked at him, her heart warming. Maybe you're right. The fire crackled gently, filling the soft spaces between their words. As the night grew deeper, the storm continued outside, but inside there was a stillness that felt almost magical. Emily felt safe, understood, and strangely connected to the quiet cowboy who had once been a stranger on a lonely road. She realized something important. Caleb wasn't just a kind man helping her. He was someone who saw her clearly, someone she felt drawn to in a way she couldn't explain. And even though neither of them said it out loud, they both felt it. This unexpected storm had brought more than rain. It had brought a connection both of them needed, even if they didn't know it until that moment.